Sex addiction, attachment style. In this episode of Unhinged Addiction, I'm going to be talking about that. I'm your host, Eric Zink. I go by Eric B. Zink on YouTube and Facebook, or the Mr. Impulsive on TikTok and Instagram. Wanted to talk about attachment theory and sex addiction because I never really thought sex addiction was as much of a thing in a sense, I guess, as it is. When just right now went back to therapy, I went into therapy because I was struggling with some stuff. And we started talking, and next thing you know, I had this therapist who's like, you have an anxious attachment style. No idea what this means. So I talked to her about it, do a bunch of research, and if you don't know about attachment styles, so attachment styles is how we're raised as a child. We're brought into this world, and we have a mom, dad, or just dad, whoever. And as our caregivers are the only ones we know. And we start building how we see the world. Anxious attachment style is when you have one parent who's very loving and one parent who is not, and is very distant and cold. That was my childhood. I had a dad who was a doctor, a really successful doctor, but he didn't know how to be a dad. I had a mom who was very loving. So I never knew what I was going to get. I didn't know if my caregiver was going to give me love or if I was going to be ignored, which starts off this way that your brain starts seeing the world. And I realized I lived a ton of my life in fight or flight mode. My dad, I would hear stories, my mom would tell me these stories with my dad she'd come home and I'd be screaming in my bedroom in the crib. And she'd ask my dad how long I'd been crying for. My dad'd be like, oh, like for an hour, 2 hours, I don't know what's wrong with him. Never once would he go check on me, any of that. And my mom would go in there and, clean my diaper or whatever it was. And my mom was a very loving, hands-on person. My dad wasn't. And so I never knew kind of what I was going to get. I didn't know if I was going to be loved or not. And I couldn't regulate myself really. I learned, I had to get other people to feel my emotions if they weren't soothing me, because I needed a mom in a sense, I guess, is what I needed. I needed everybody now all of a sudden in my life who was especially a romantic partner to be like a mom. I didn't really realize that this affected me so much later on. And I always thought that sex for me wasn't really an addiction. It was like an add-on, because when I would get high, I would just have sex with whoever I could, whether it was, my ex-wife's cousin, saleswomen, whatever women were around me, man. And I just figured it was just because I was high, I was chasing this, extra high, and that this isn't really addiction, it's just me adding on to this high. But really looking back at life, even not as an addict, not high, I could always justify cheating. And I could justify sleeping with other people because I just wanted to feel loved. My brain would constantly make me think that people are going to leave and that I'm not going to get loved. So if I can surround myself with all these people that love me and want me, I feel good. And that's kind of what I did. Not really realizing how much this really affected my life and how I looked at things. And looking back at it now, I really think I had a sex addiction problem because I needed other people to emotionally regulate me through sex. Sex is something I use to emotionally regulate. I use it to feel good. I used it as an escape. And so if I couldn't really get it from who I was with, I was going to find somebody to get it from. And I wanted people always in my life to feed this. And to me, it was just normal. I mean, I would self-sabotage relationships. They would blow up about every 4 years. I would blame it on my addiction. I would blame it on the other people. I was always the victim. It was never anybody else's fault. It was always, or never my fault. It was always everybody else's fault. It was never my fault that a relationship failed. I did everything I could, even though, really breaking it down after being in therapy like I have, I see all these ways that I set all my relationships up to fail. Because if they failed, I was in control. No one was ever going to truly leave me. I could leave them essentially first. And that's a horrible way to be. And I think there's a lot of people out there that actually really struggle with this. And one of those things, was with sex. And so majority of my life, like sex was always something that was really important. My first wife, I cheated on her a bunch. I always felt like she was going to leave me. I wanted to leave her like 6 months into our marriage. We moved out to California. I have no support out there. It's like me and my ex-wife. And she ended up leaving me. Like I had manifested her into leaving me. I was a horrible human being to her, but I did a great job of manifesting her leaving me, and she did. And I don't blame her. I mean, I cheated on her a bunch. Um, and that part kind of just sucks. Like she was a cool person. She didn't deserve what I put her through. And I kind of blamed it on alcohol. I blamed it on drinking. Like maybe I'm just like an addict. Like sex isn't really an addiction. Like alcohol makes sense. Cocaine made sense. Sex didn't really make sense. And man, just all these relationships, even with Brandy, our relationship. I mean, I didn't cheat on her because our relationship was very sex driven together, and so I was kind of getting those needs met. But even then, I was always like flirting with people. I always needed like this outside validation, just to know that I was okay, to know that I was wanted. I could use other people. Like if I couldn't get a hold of like the person in my life, I could get a hold of these other people, and they could regulate my emotions. Like the basic like things, like finding a mom to come calm me down and pat my back. And it sounds so dumb when you're 45 and you're saying this crap, but it was. Like I look back and I remember when the therapist was telling me this, I'm like, God, this all makes so much sense. Because if I fast forward all the way to Amber and my relationship, I cheated on Amber a ton. And I cheated on her with Casey, the receptionist. I cheated on her with a bunch of different people, and I blamed it all on cocaine. And it was cocaine, it was alcohol. I'm unfaithful, doing that normal thing. And I just figured, I'm doing it because, like, I'm just trying to add to my high. And I didn't realize it was actually more than that. It wasn't that I was trying to add to my high. It was that I wasn't happy in my relationship. I wanted other people. I wanted the self-validation. I wanted to feel loved. I was constantly afraid of being by myself. I had such a huge fear of being alone. That's ridiculous, but I did. So if I could have all these other people that wanted me, it just made me feel better, and it made me not as worried and as scared. It got me out of fight or flight mode some. And when I got sober, I apologized to Amber. She ended up finding out about the cheating on her. And everything was good for like 6 months. I got sober. 7/25/17 is when I got sober. And I ended up going to Family RV. I'm working there. I'm sober. I'm going to turn my life around. We got this. Really dig in. And I'm like, okay, I'm not cheating on her. I'm not doing anything. Like, I'm good. And I was good for about 6 months. I had a roommate, just really kind of focused on life. But again, we didn't go to like couples therapy or any of this. And I didn't realize that, yeah, as though I'm fighting this addiction, I still need to feel loved, all of this. And I don't have alcohol and cocaine now to like emotionally regulate me also. And it was all right, but it was like, it wasn't enough. And I'll never forget, the first time I cheated on her was with her cousin. I was sober when I did that. Her cousin and I started kind of hanging out again. She was living with her boyfriend at the time. And I went and picked her up. We went out. She had like a couple drinks. And I'm like 6 months sober, pulling that whole, look at me, I'm sober shit. And we're in the car. And I don't even remember how it fully led to it. But next thing you know, I parked behind some plaza in Huntington Beach. And we ended up having sex in the back of my truck. And I remember she didn't even really want to have sex with me, but she just kind of did it because it was something that we did. And that was the last time I had sex with her. And it kind of like ignited something a little bit in me. And it was like, I was always looking for better. I was always looking for more because it was just never enough. And then I talked to a girl that I went to high school with. And I ended up having this weekend affair with her. I went to Michigan because I just started all of my like mental health shit, the toxic shit that I did. And the news put me on the news up there. And so I'm going to fly back to Michigan. I'm going to do this news story. My dad's committed suicide. I just want to kind of feel loved. Like after my dad killed himself, I think I struggled because my dad really went from being that person that wasn't there to that person that did help emotionally regulate me. He helped me a lot through Brandy's death, and he helped me through a lot. And I didn't have that person in my life. And my mom was also very distracted at the time because my dad killed himself. So she wasn't there to give me like her full attention. And I hated it, man. I remember Jessica gave me attention. And it kind of just it made me feel good. Like I liked being flirted with. I liked that dopamine rush, that excitement. We I start this business, called it Driven. And selling shirts, starting to talk about suicide awareness, all this. I wasn't really like as honest and open about shit as I am now. I was not healed at all. And we fly to Michigan so I could do this story with the local news station. We fly up there, and I tell my wife to stay behind. And I fly up with Jessica. We get a hotel room, and I did that news story, but we end up in the hotel room majority of the time just having sex. And like I felt like she would save me. Like I was always looking for a savior, and like she was the one that would save me now. And I think that's what I would fall for these women who were very avoidant attachment because they were like a parent. I avoidant attachment when it comes to anxiously attached. We think that they have their emotions under control, all that, and they're the worst people for us to really actually be with. But we attracted each other, and she was very avoidant attachment. But I was like, man, like this is the ultimate person. She's really successful. She's cool. She's calm. Like she doesn't have the same mental issues that I do. And like maybe if I'm around her, I will just through like osmosis get her emotional stability. She likes to have sex. I like to have sex. It would have never worked out. It would have like looking back at it. But like at the time, though, that was what I really wanted. And so it was amazing because it didn't end up working out. We ended up having just a fun weekend, a lot of sex, got back, and kind of reality came back in. I was going to actually start looking at moving out, and next thing I know, like all my plans fell apart. And so I just kind of buckled back in with Amber, and I was like, no, I just got to do it. This is my lot in life, and I was okay with that. And I did. I focused back in on a relationship. I ended up getting fired from Family RV. And whenever I was like in panic mode, if I had something else to distract me, it was never like as bad of like urges and self-sabotaging because my brain was more focused on like, okay, I got to make money. I got to go do this. And I remember just being in like this work, go mode, like find what works for me. I ended up going to Giant RV and working, ended up becoming a rep. And then things kind of slowed back down, and now I'm sober this whole time, and it never dawns on me like maybe I should like go to therapy, be honest with my therapist, break up with or like separate from my wife and figure things out because to put her through all this was not fair. But I did. And like I could always justify cheating. And if you would have asked me if I cheated on her, I would have actually been like no. Like I was really big on like I'm not really doing anything wrong. I would become the victim again. It's so dumb how I would like change everything and just manipulate it around me. That's a really evil way to be, and that's how I was though. So now I'm a rep, and I remember even I would get on dating apps when I would go to Indiana. And I went on a date with a girl, ended up sleeping with her and having sex. One time I was out there, found a prostitute and had sex. Like when I was on the road, I would find just people to have sex with. And like that was kind of the messed up thing of it really just didn't count. Like I had no guilt. I had no shame because it was never my fault. Like I didn't push myself to do this, Amber did or whatever in my life made me. Which is so toxic to be. But it made me like feel good. And this was like that sick addiction obsession of where it just subconsciously is there. You don't even really realize it. You're doing this stuff on such a subconscious level that you're not even fully aware of what you're doing. There's no control. It just, once the motion is going, it's going. And it's like, I knew, Amber knew I was cheating on her. She used to make me like videotape or like FaceTime her, and I would open up all like the closets and stuff and show her that nobody was in my room. Because she knew. I don't know. I mean, we shouldn't have been together. I think even being together helped me justify even more of knowing that it was a toxic relationship, and pushing me to where I could justify cheating even more. And like all of this like is not light ups to go to therapy or any of this. I remember with Amber, we used to get in fights, and I'd be like, let's go at least to couples therapy or whatever. And she never wanted to. Not that it would probably made any difference, because I would have lied. I was the worst in therapy for a long time. I didn't know how to be honest with therapists. And so it was rough, man. And the worst part is when you are a sex addict like this, it leaves you the same thing as drugs. Like the excitement of finding somebody to have sex with, and the flirting and the build up was like created a lot of dopamine, made you feel really good, made you feel wanted. And then afterwards, it was just such an empty feeling, and just feeling disgusted with yourself. And that was the worst feeling. Like, I hated that feeling. And I would try my best not to cheat on her when I would go, and I would slip up every now and then. And I would just like literally block it out of my brain that I did that. It didn't get bad until 2020. And it's funny that like here I can sit and just honestly talk about cheating on my ex-wife as it is, it ain't no thing. Like, that's the screwed up part. That's the sickness, and why I agree so much that it's an addiction. Because there's a part of me that it was like, it wasn't anything. It was like totally justifiable. And it blows my mind that I could be that kind of a person. And but that's how an addict is. Like, we protect our addiction more than anything else. That's the only thing that matters to us. And like 2020 comes around, and it was even worse, because it was like I could kind of control it, but now all of a sudden, like being forced at home, I couldn't travel. I was an RV rep. Nobody knows what's going to go on. You know, COVID hits, we can't travel. Like, I'm working out of my house, like super bored, not really doing a whole lot of work. And, you know, I started, you know, social media by this time a lot. And I had, you know, decent sized platforms, and I find out about OnlyFans, and next thing you know, I create an OnlyFans account as a joke. And then I'm start using that as, hey, I can have sex with people this way, and I'll make money this way, and it can justify, because this buys our cigarettes, and it's our coffee money and all this. Like, I would just find ways to justify, just like an addict, of why it was okay for me to do this. And I would go on to Craigslist. I ended up finding one girl, her name was Kat, and we would have sex like a couple times a month, and I would record it, and I'd pop a Viagra, and we'd have sex for like 4 hours straight. And I would just record the whole thing and then sell it on OnlyFans. And I would get on Tinder and find people, end up having sex with them. And it was just kind of like all out of boredom, like an addict. That's the worst thing. Like, you ask addicts, and they're like, oh, I realized, yeah, we get bored. And it's like your brain is craving this, and it's craving being wanted. That was the big thing. It's like, I knew I didn't feel wanted in my relationship. I didn't communicate anything, so it's not anyone else's fault. But like, I would just set myself up for failure, where it was like an obsession. Like, I was obsessed with people liking me, wanting me. It wasn't even about the sex. It was just about being wanted. Like, to have somebody want you was the greatest feeling in the world. And then no matter what, you're never going to be alone. And I think that's one of the things that really drew me into cheating and others, was just this whole belief of like, see, people do want me no matter what. Even if I have to pay for it, they still want me. And it's even funny talking about this, of like all the other than like memories and stuff that pop up of times that I cheated that I've like blocked out. I mean, I remember one girl, she was so like high on like opiates or whatever. I picked her up in this really rich neighborhood. I found her on Craigslist. God, I was working at Family RV. And I think I took like an early, like a long lunch. I told everybody because I same normal addiction, lie, have an appointment, whatever bullshit. I picked her up, and she wasn't a bad looking girl, but she was so high. I took her to this motel or hotel, and she was like, "The only thing you can't do is finish in my mouth or whatever." And I'm like, "All right." Like this girl's a whack job. Met her off of Craigslist. I'm having sex with her without a condom. Don't know if she's on birth control or any of that. Like not being safe. No clue if I get STDs or not. I mean, I ended up never getting STD. But like with addiction, you don't care. You put yourself in all these risky situations. That's the thing is like looking back at this, like how did I just kind of block this whole thing out of my brain? And it has nothing to do with looks. Like Amber was an attractive woman. Some of the women I cheated on her with were fucking. It was like having a 10 at home and cheating on her with a 1. It wasn't that I was cheating because I needed like hot whatever. It was like I just needed I'm being wanted feeling. And that's kind of what I just really really went after was I just wanted to be wanted. And it's just it doesn't make any sense. Because our sex life at home sucked. A lot of it was I wouldn't initiate anything. And I think that's like, again, as an addict, it was like me self-sabotaging. I'm not having sex at home. My wife doesn't want to have sex with me. Well, I'm not the one instigating. I'm not telling her I want to have sex, any of that. Just expecting her to read my mind. But kind of not wanting her to read my mind because if she does, then, I can go and cheat on her. And it was such a high. I would get so high with just the thought of cheating. That's where it would release all the dopamine. The thought of cheating got me high, just excited. And then you're like looking on Craigslist or you start hitting up people like, who do they know that I could cheat on with? And it was like, that was the only thing I cared about. And it'd be like, I would get hyper focused in on it. It gave me kind of like a purpose. And then once I found somebody, it then shifted and I felt wanted. And it was like it re-justified that, see, other people do want me no matter what. I've always been successful my entire life. And so I would always have money. So no matter what, if I had to even buy the love, people would let me buy their love. And it would just regulate me. It would make me feel okay. And then the worst though is like zipping up your pants, man. And you're looking at this other girl zipping up hers and going, God, why did I just do this? Like this was a waste of money. This was a waste of time. I mean, I would have sex with some of these people that, like, I'd take them out, we'd go get ice cream or whatever, and like be chilling and talking, and go to a hotel and fuck. And afterwards, I'm like, God, like, I could have never imagined being single and fucking you because you're not my type at all. But it was what I needed. And that's how we are as an addict. Like, no one in their right mind just thinks I'm going to stick a needle in my arm. And I had a lot of trouble, I think, really admitting that, I had an addiction to sex. And what that addiction was that escape. It helped with trauma. I mean, I'm a firm believer that a lot of addiction and a lot of us are addicts because of trauma. And it helped with my anxious attachment style, which is essentially childhood trauma. People aren't going to stand you up. People are really good communicators when it comes to money or it comes to setting something like this up. And so 2020 hit and OnlyFans is going, and now all of a sudden, like, I go back to just who I was without the drugs. And looking back, like, I could never blame what I did cheating wise on drugs or on alcohol. I did it because there was another addiction there. And I remember I hit this girl up, her name was Sydney. And she was hot. And she was an escort. And she was like, oh, I don't really let people film. But then she set up an OnlyFans. And so I'd go over there and have sex with her and film. And then it was like even this more naughty of like, I have all these videos of all these women on my phone. And it was like that flirting with getting caught. Because like as addicts, we have all this stuff that we kind of get off to of like this kind of getting caught. I mean, I remember masturbating at home to watching me have sex with other women while my wife is like in the bed, asleep. And that's that sickness that we have as an addict of like the messed up stuff that we do. And even then, I never had the balls to tell people I was addicted to sex. I would tell people like, oh, I'm really hypersexual. Like I'd come up with all the excuses in the world. I'm hypersexual. I'm ADHD. I take ADHD meds, so that makes me hypersexual. It's not my fault. And I would surround myself with people that enabled me. And that's the only thing that I kind of cared about. Like, and it wasn't even about the sex. It was just the knowing that somebody wanted me and that I could get it. I remember I was so toxic even with the platform that I had back then. I would have girls hit me up. One of them I remember, her name was Alexis, and she lived in Arizona. I drove out to Arizona because I had dealers out there, so I made it a work trip. And I buckled into a hotel for like 2 days and just had sex with her like 6 times a day. And then I took her to the airport to fly her out to rehab. I had a girl who wanted to meet up with me. Went to some community, like a small, like University of Irvine or something. And I remember, like I went back to her dorm and I ended up having sex with her a couple times. And it was just all about like what I could do and just chasing this high. And eventually Amber and I finally separated. And looking back, I mean, we failed because she was avoidant attachment also. And she was also kind of anxiously attached. And I think that's why we failed too, because it's kind of like you see your shadow. Like anxious attachment people don't do well with other anxious attachment people even. And we couldn't communicate age, all that stuff. Like I was just not a good person. Like I can't even come up with excuses. I'm very unhealed. And then whenever I was single, like it just enabled what I did. Like what I did then all of a sudden wasn't as bad. And I remember continually though, like wanting to look for someone, wanting to find this woman who was going to save my life. It was amazing how it was like I looked for mom. And this was the anxious attachment style part of me. Looking for a woman who would fix it all. Like I wanted to, and it was like I kept moving the goalpost, like making sure that I would fail. Like I wanted a woman who was really successful and owned a home and no kids and like all of this, like all these criteria. If they made this, then I wouldn't cheat and then I would be happy. But none of it would ever happen. And I remember like I would just use then women for sex. We separated and I moved to Arizona. I remember I jumped on a bunch of apps in Arizona. And I wasn't there extremely long. And there was some people I could have had sex with, but it was funny because as soon as I was single, I was more picky of who I'd have sex with versus if I was in a relationship or not. If I was in a relationship, my standards went down because I was just craving this addiction side. And then if I was single, it was so weird, like my standards would go up. So I would make sure I had a bunch of people that would sext me and send me nudes. And I was there from September until November. And there was one girl I would hang out with every now and then, and we would have sex. And I remember I started talking to this girl in Orange County and was going to date her because she was maybe what I needed. Get my job up here in Boise, Idaho. So I go through Orange County. I ended up sleeping with my ex-wife then. I sleep with this girl named Alex. And she was hot, but she, again, was really weird. But I was like, oh, I'll do a long distance relationship with her. Like I needed to be in a relationship all of a sudden. Like if I was single, it was like. And I was like, no. And she hits me up. Like we literally had sex that morning. And I said goodbye to her. And then I'm driving up to Boise and she says, yeah, we can't do this. I'm like, all right. I get up to Boise and I end up finding a girl out here I have sex with, and like start finding people here to have sex with, and get on all the apps. And I end up meeting my wife now. It was the best thing ever because she's the only one that ever really locked horns with me. Like, why do you do the things you do? And she's the one that made me really look and go, I have a sex addiction. I mean, we got together, and like when we finally like hunkered down and started a life together, I never physically cheated on her, but I emotionally did. Like, I always had girls sending me nudes. I always had girls in my Snapchats. And it was like I needed that self validation from others because she was going to leave me. That was like my whole belief system. And it really, I think that was the first thing that really like rocked my life. Was here she should have left. You know, we actually broke up for like 5 days. And I'm like, she's not going to fucking care about me. See, it's like everyone else. It's that whole victim addict side of us. But this girl did like me and she did love me. And I'm like, fuck, like, why am I doing this stuff? I find a therapist. I'm like, I'm trying to actually seek answers because what she was doing wasn't how it was supposed to be. And I get into therapy and I start really realizing like where a lot of this is coming from. And a lot of it just came from Eric wanted to be loved as a kid. As much as people want to say like sex isn't love, there is a part of it that you're looking for love or you're looking for connection. And I think for love, for me, I was really looking for connection. I became obsessed with it. It became a distraction. It became a distraction from a lot of that pain. And the more that I started really addressing my childhood trauma, like the less I was like craving the sneaking around and the hiding it and the thrill of it. Because that was what a big thing of addiction was, is you crave the process. I craved the process of, you know, talking a girl into sending me nudes or talking a girl into sending me a video of her masturbating. Knowing then that I could do it, knowing that I was wanted. Like that was the crap that I kind of would thrive on. And then when you get when you start to really realize like you don't need that and like you can have that with your partner and when you and your partner have this healthy communication going on, that you can have this really healthy relationship all of a sudden. But it didn't even fix itself right away. Like it took me a long time. I think what really, the most that's helped me with this is I went back to therapy. I was very honest with my therapist. And I told her, I keep doing the same thing I did in addiction. And this is why I think it was this way. I remember telling, even in AA, I got my 5-year chip and I was sobbing because I was telling everybody, like, you know, every 4 years it's like this cycle, and I keep doing all this stuff I used to do as an addict. And I think part of it was because I was still an addict. I was still a sex addict, and or at least like an attention whore addict. I don't know. And I remember telling my therapist this, and that's when we really started like digging in on my childhood and why I was really doing the things that I was doing and these core beliefs that I didn't love myself. And that was one of the big things like with therapy, is learning that I didn't love myself. I didn't know who I was. I didn't know how to express myself or to share because I was so afraid and like alert of others and aware of others and how others felt and what others were doing, because others, I don't want anyone else to leave me and no one can leave me. And so it really dictated a lot of my life. And once I really kind of understood that, I was able to make my life a lot better and realize like, okay, I am okay. You know, I'm all right by myself. I love myself. And at least getting to see and hear myself. And even then I stopped because the therapy only got me so far. And I would still have like these meltdown sessions. I would still like every 5 months. And I don't know, like I can't say I've made it past the 5 months. So my last meltdown here with my wife was in August. And it is October 2nd. So it was kind of in the beginning of August. So I'm nowhere, I'm like almost 2 months in. And it was like every 3 months to 4 months, I would say, there'd be this meltdown session. And like I would just lash out. It was bad. I'd freak out on stuff. I wouldn't say things. I set her up for failure. There'd be a lot of tension between us and unhappiness all of a sudden because she wouldn't read my mind. and I'd go back to my therapist and I'd get some tools, and it just, nothing, it got me, I was better, but not where I needed or wanted to be. And finally, then this most recent one, we were in Kentucky, and it wasn't good. My wife was really upset at me. I made her feel really bad. And like we were even talking, like there's a lot of frustration. I was frustrated with myself. It was so weird. Like I'd get so emotionally charged up, and then after a day, and I become more logical, I'd look back at what I did and be like, why did I do that, or why did I act that way, or what the hell was that? It was so weird how I had this different emotional brain versus a logical brain, and I hated it. And I had found a therapist, and I was like, maybe EMDR. I don't really know what EMDR is, but maybe EMDR. Like, I know I probably have childhood trauma in there still. I know that I'm probably triggered off of stuff. And so I went to this EMDR therapist, and the first whole time with them, you're just answering questions and you're talking and you're going through the motions. And so I'm going through these motions, but she starts really quizzing in on my childhood. And that's where she asked me, do you know anything about attachment theory? And I was like, no, I don't know anything about attachment theory. So she really starts explaining to me what it is and how parents raise kids, and how as kids you're in fight or flight mode a lot, and you have anxious attachment, avoidant attachment, and anxious avoidant attachment. Like there's all these different attachment styles, and the most important one, and the best one, is a secure attachment. Like you can emotionally regulate yourself, you can soothe yourself, you can soothe others. You're very in tune with your emotions, and that was my problem. Is I knew I was in tune when my emotions were thrown off, but I wasn't in tune on how to actually soothe them and to calm my emotions. And that was a really big challenge for me all of a sudden. And so now I really struggled with that. And I knew that. And I was like, God, this is me. And so she was like, you are anxious attachment. And I went home, and it was like a huge light just turned on. Like, okay, I'm anxious attached. What does this mean? And I started doing a lot of my own work and homework, and learning a lot on anxious attachment and triggers of anxious attachment, and understanding how it is and how it feels to be triggered. And started, EMDR therapy, because, I lost a dad to suicide. I lost a wife to suicide. I have a lot of abandonment challenges, a lot of struggles with my dad that from a childhood have dictated a lot in how I am emotionally. And it was funny because when you really focus in on it, and when it came to the sex, the sex addiction side left, but this whole trauma side that it kind of hid was so exposed. And that was the part that really sucked, is how exposed it was. And I'm like, now having answers though made such a difference. And that's why it was so nice going in. And at first I remember it was so funny because I went in and I was like, no, I don't really fucking need to do all this. And then as soon as everything happened, I'm like, no, I need all the fucking appointments. I need all the fucking appointments. And so I go to do EMDR therapy now twice a week, or a month. And it helps, but the other thing that helps is really I have a little talking to my inner child, knowing when, I am triggered on things, and reminding myself that I am 45, I have a successful business, and my wife was to ever leave me, that's okay. I can create my own life. Reminding myself that I'm okay, and reminding myself that, I am an adult. I'm not a child anymore, but it's really amazing when you get stuck into that trauma cycle, in a sense, that you are a child. Looking back of how many people, I was always looking for somebody who was really hot, loved to have sex, and could be a parent to me. Those were my three biggest things. And then also had to also be really successful. And then, and so I would keep adding things to it, because it was I thought I was setting boundaries and trying to narrow it in, but in reality, I was trying to make it more and more impossible to find somebody, in a sense. It was my own way of self-sabotaging myself, and I never really realized that. And the best thing I ever did for myself in this struggle was realizing it, because there's a lot of connection, I believe, in relationships and yourself and attachment style, and even into addiction. And trying to find things like it's amazing the things that we'll find to try and emotionally regulate us, like that make us feel normal or calm us down or slow us down, and then we become obsessed with them and we lose control over things. And that's what addiction really is. Like, and again, I don't. It's always hard because people are like, "Oh, addiction's genetics." I think a lot of what that genetic side to it is that it's unhealed people hurting unhealed people, like families passing down this hurt that, yeah, it kind of leads to addiction. And you realize, hey, my parents drank or did this, maybe I'll do it, and it will take away the pain or what have you. A lot of my addiction, I feel, was very, very trauma based and very pain based and escape. It was like addiction to me it was a solution. It was a solution to the pain. It made the pain go away, and it was what my brain thought was the easiest and the quickest rewarding, the least. Like, that's the other thing too, is like with the addict, we don't want to put in a lot of work. Like when you're talking to addicts when they're first kind of contemplating getting sober, it's always like, well, what's the easiest way to do this? No addict, I've never heard anyone just be like, hey, what's the hardest way to get sober from this? No one ever says that. What's the easiest? It's always the easiest, and there is no easiest. And a lot of it is finding what works for you. The one thing I think it would have made a huge difference, though, is if I would have found out about my attachment style a lot earlier, if I would have started EMDR therapy a lot sooner, I think it would have made me a lot further ahead in how I control my emotions and how I show up for myself. And even now, like doing this, it's like, it reminds me, like I have to get back on it because like I've stopped showing up for myself some, which isn't good because then it's like I start to feel this whole other side of me kind of creep back in, and I've been doing really good until recently of like setting a goal of like, hey, I'm going to read 10 pages every night for 5 days. Just these little goals to keep accomplishing these little things and showing myself that I'm going to do these promises and hold up to them. I stopped going to the gym. I lost my little gym pass thing. That was a big one. Walking 10,000 steps a day. Like I've let a lot of things slide, unfortunately, and I tend to do that in the wintertime just because it's cold out. I don't necessarily want to walk outside, and it's like everything seems like it's just more work. But I think that's when it's the most important to show up for yourself, because I've done a very good job of creating an inner dialogue with my inner child and being very aware of how I react to if I'm triggered versus not being triggered, and feeling my body and realizing I'm going to go down one of these kind of episode routes or not. And it's made a huge difference in how things that I do in my life to protect it. And I think that's just important. I mean, if I could say this to anybody out there struggling and they're like, dude, like my life just doesn't make sense and I'm struggling with a lot of things still and I'm so afraid of being alone. I mean, I would get your attachment style tested and start really working on your attachment style of going towards secure. Because the cool thing about it is once you're like, oh, okay, for me, I'm anxiously attached. Like, what can I start working on? And then you start finding stuff to work on. And then you do start to see improvements, and you see some improvements in your relationship. And it's like, you see the growth, I think, to it a lot easier when it comes to some of this personal work than it is like sometimes when we're just getting sober and it's like, hey, 30 days has went by great. But our cravings are like, you're going through all that stuff still. I don't know, man. It was a game changer for me, and I think that there's a lot of people out there that could really, truly just benefit from finding out what their attachment style is, and then finding out what they can do to start, working towards a secure attachment and a healthier relationship with themselves. And it's amazing how a lot of the urges and cravings and all this other BS just starts to kind of go away. And it is a great feeling. It is truly a great, great feeling. And I appreciate anybody who listens to these podcasts. I'm really excited. We have a new office space that we've just leased. Hopefully this is one of the last podcasts that I do on my own that's here. I'm going to try and get more and more guests and Zooms. I've done a couple with Keith with Sunflower Sober, and he's been awesome to do them with. I have another one coming up with Brian. I'm going to start making a big conscious effort to find people to do podcasts with, just because I really enjoy sharing other people's trauma and what they wish that they would have learned sooner, and then overcoming that. Because I think the biggest problem is I think a lot of us look out there for things of people who we can relate to and stories we can relate to, but what they wish they would have did that they didn't do, I think is key for us. Because it's, we always want to know, well, what did you do and how did you get better? But what do you wish you would have did after this happened, per se? that could have sped the whole process up and made it truly easier. And like for mine, like if I would have, after I got sober, lost my dad, and started to see the cycle come back, if I would have went into therapy and been honest with the therapist and went down the whole attachment theory route, I think my life would have been a different outcome. Again, I'm very happy with where my life is, so I'm glad that I didn't jinx that part of it, but I think it's really important to find out what your attachment style is and really work on yourself, because the relationships that you're in affect so much about your sobriety and staying sober. So if I could give you any piece of advice, learn about your attachment style and start working towards being securely attached.